Hi, this is Josh McDowell, and you're about to see something that I haven't seen yet. In fact, no one has, because this video is being shot by our camera crew right here in Russia during Operation Carelift 96. And it won't be finished for several weeks. Right now, they're following us around as we go to orphanages and hospitals, and they're capturing on tape the emotional roller coaster that we're on. At this moment, we're in a classroom at an orphanage. It's indescribable. And as of today, we're 9 days into the 2-week Carelift trip, and believe me, I've already seen tears of deep pain and sorrow. And I've seen more tears of joy, forgiveness, and new hope. Often both kinds of tears come from the same individual. My 9-year-old daughter, Heather, is with me on this trip. And on the first day, she came back and I said, "Honey, how did it go?" And she started to cry and she said, "Daddy, these kids are so wonderful, they're so sweet, and they don't have anything." And then she talked about 2 little girls whose parents had just dropped them off at the front of the orphanage because they couldn't care for them and left. And she went in and played with these 2 little orphans for about an hour to an hour and a half. And she shared Jesus with them in her little picture book. And then she started just weep more, and she says, "Daddy, it was so hard to leave them. I just wanted to adopt them." And you know, that's just one story that I personally happen to have the privilege of witnessing. That's just 2 lives that we've touched. And there are right now, scattered across Russia, almost 400 volunteers and staff members who are experiencing the same thing. They are touching hundreds, even thousands of lives of orphans in hospitals with care packs and hunger boxes, food, gifts, medicine, and good old-fashioned hugs and smiles. And there's only one video crew, and as you can tell, they're here with me. And so what you're about to see only represents a small portion of the impact that God is making through Operation Carelift. It's thrilling to be a part of something that's so much bigger than anything just one of us could do. And this is surely God's work. Friend, before we go to this exclusive video report on Operation Carelift 96, I want to repeat something that I've already said many times in the last few weeks. I've said it to the volunteers, I've said it to the orphanage directors and hospital workers, and I've said it to the Lord. You and others like you made all this possible. Without your direct involvement, the Carelift would not have had the impact that we're seeing around us. I thank the Lord for you. And as a token of our appreciation, I've asked the production team to make sure that you get one of the very first copies of this video. We expect to use this video later this year to recruit volunteers for Operation Carelift 97. Please continue to pray that many will come with us. But right now, I hope you accept this videotape as a small gift from my staff and me to you. So without further ado, this is the premiere of our very special Operation Carelift 96 video report.
So Angela, has he asked you to prom yet?
No, not yet. He doesn't know. He
I
has
have to
to
ask you to
Wait.
prom.
I know he
We'll
does.
all have to go prom shopping.
Yes.
Because we have to get, you know, like little things for our
Accessories
hair.
and
Accessorize.
Accessorize. Yeah, but I'm like, imagine them together. Yeah, I can imagine them together.
You guys will get married, that's what I say.
Hold on. Prom.
Such are the dreams of teenaged girls. But for Sveta, these will only be dreams. Sveta is an orphan who lives in the children's shelter of Russia. On her 18th birthday, she'll have to leave the shelter. It's the law. Without a home and with very slim prospects for a job, there's an 80% chance Sveta will become a prostitute. Tragically, her story is not unusual. Right now, thousands of Russian children live in orphanages, youth prisons, and shelters throughout the country. With a government in chaos, an economy in shambles, and rampant crime and immorality, life for any Russian, especially the children, holds little hope.
Life is different and difficult in Russia. We don't trust our government like first years in Perestroika.
Russia right now is going through a terrible economic crisis, and it's very difficult to get the proper amounts of medicine and supplies for these children here.
Mafia everywhere. everywhere. And many people in Russia, in Moscow especially, afraid go on the street in dark time. So it's very dangerous.
If I were a Russian, I would be scared to death. And I would think there is no hope for the future. And I wonder what makes non-Christians get up and go to work every morning.
The struggle to survive has taken its toll on the Russian people. For some, life has become a vicious circle in which poverty and affliction feed on each other. The poor are malnourished. Children do not develop properly. Babies are born with birth defects. Parents cannot afford to care for their unhealthy children.
And this has been a large problem with Russia having to deal with this. Currently, these children are placed in orphanages, and the orphanages are receiving 5,000 rubles a day, which is $1, to feed and clothe and nourish these children, and that's impossible to do. And that's why I was telling you earlier about the malnutrition. On $1 a day, you cannot feed a child and him grow properly, let alone provide them with soap and water to prevent skin diseases and hygiene and new clothing and things. There was an article in the paper this week on one of the orphanages, and it stated that for lunch, these children receive 1 apple. And that's not enough for the children. It's not enough.
Without Christ, the cruelties of life can be overwhelming. Not knowing where to turn has devastated many Russians. Alcoholism is epidemic. The family structure is collapsing. Unfortunately, it is often the children who pay for the sins of their fathers.
These kids have been abandoned by their parents, and usually we find them at the train stations, in attics and basements.
Irina Viktorovna is the director of the Children's Shelter of Russia, the same shelter in which Sveta lives. Irina has seen firsthand the harsh conditions in which many Russian children are forced to live.
Some of the children that are present here are those who suffered different kinds of abuse from their families, including psychological, sexual, and physical. For example, I know kids here whose parents made them go to the train stations and collect money or beg for food. And these kids were feeding their parents with all they got at those train stations. And in case they didn't bring enough back home, the parents would just beat them up. Another example is a 9-year-old girl who for a whole year had been sold for sex, and she was sold by her own grandmother.
Abandoned, abused, neglected. They are the orphans of Russia.
The Lord was gracious to us today and allowed us to see a lot of people, meet a lot of needs, and minister to a lot of folks, and we were ministered to in return.
They came from all over the U.S. and Canada. 393 volunteers joined together for the sole purpose of sharing the love of Christ with the Russian people.
It was just really an act of God today.
About the whole class prayed and accepted Jesus into their heart.
And so I saw the Lord change your heart. Praise the Lord.
In less than 2 weeks, 63,826 Russian children and adults not only heard the good news of God's love for them, but also saw that love acted out.
We delivered food to an orphanage in Balkov, and when I went into the pantry, the storeroom, to see what was there, all that was in there were sacks of sugar. There was no other food items at all.
One principal said, "You have come just at the right time. We have just used up the last of our food."
One orphanage director ran over to me when we delivered food to her school. I mean, she literally scared me to death. She came from across the room. She grabbed me. She kissed me and she held me to her. And when she pulled back, there were tears streaming down her face. And she simply said to me, "Thank you for feeding my children."
Besides food, there were also gifts for the children.
This morning we went into a classroom and we were able to show the children what was in the gift packs. And what was so neat was that once I shared with them that the bag wasn't just articles, but it was put together by hundreds of Americans, and they had a personal letter in there, and it was really special. The kids just started clapping and applauding and screaming and jumping up and down, so it was really special.
I remember one little boy, when he opened his care pack, he pulled out his ballpoint pen, hung it on the outside of his shirt and said, "You know, I've never had a ballpoint pen of my own."
But these gifts only prepared hearts to receive the greatest gift.
I closed my eyes when Aunt Tanya led the kids in a prayer to place their faith in Christ, and I heard all these little voices around me praying out loud along with Aunt Tanya. After the tape was over, we asked the kids to raise their hands if they had made a decision that day to place their faith in Christ, and about 15 out of the 20 kids raised their hands.
We have asked them at the end, did you really pray to receive Christ? If you did, we'd like for you to raise your hand. And almost without exception, I would say anywhere from 1/2 to 3/4 of the children respond and say, "Yes, I've received Christ." Now that's an answer to prayer of everyone back home, all of the participants along the way, the teams that go into the classroom, and the staff in general.
But these people are precious, these children, and I just pray that each one of these children here today will learn to know Jesus. And that's why we're here, and we thank everybody at home for providing for this, providing for the gifts, providing for the means to come, and to bless these people. They have really blessed me.
Thousands of people worked together to bring about Operation Carelift 96. To each of you, to those who so selflessly gave money for the hunger boxes and assembled the care packs, to the 5,279 men, women, and children who so diligently worked in the Lancaster warehouse, and to the 393 volunteers who braved the harsh Russian winter to deliver these gifts, we thank you. You have made an eternal difference in the lives of the Russian people, and you've made a difference in the future of one particular girl.
Did you pray the prayer that Aunt Tanya asked you to pray?
Yes, and right beside me there was a girl, and we prayed together. She is Russian. She just looked at me. She winked at me. We decided to pray together.
What do you think about Jesus Christ and God? What does he mean to you?
А что ты думаешь об Иисусе Христе, о Боге? Что это значит для тебя?
Well, he's the way to the new life.
Дай нам сердце чистое, как снега сибирские.
The kids feel that they are not forgotten and that someone cares for them, and it's very important for them to know such things.
I saw 12-year-old girls just clinging to some of the ladies that were with us, and hugs and not wanting to say goodbye, and just that outpouring of love and affection that we were able to show them, I think met a need just as well as the food and medicine.
Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus.
God has his hand on this, and he's touching all of us and all the children that we touch. But this has to be the most beautiful thing that's ever happened to me.
It was just a moment in my life where you realize almost in a split second like that why God has put you on this earth, and it really is to extend God's love to someone else.
Thanks for taking the time to share this glimpse of Operation Carelift 96 with me. You see, by the time you see this, I trust every Carelift volunteer and staff worker will be back in their own warm, comfortable home, surrounded by family and friends. And each will have their own stories, and each will have made some new friends and touched a whole lot of lives. And believe me, each person here deserves a few days rest. They have worked so very hard. And wow, do I respect these volunteers so much, because I realize that they have sacrificed to get here, gave up vacations, dipped into their savings, and raised their own funds. And it must have been the Lord's doing, because they have been going literally nonstop day and night. But you know, that is really what it takes. Your generosity and prayers and support, combined with their dedication, has really paid off. By the time you view this, the work of Operation Carelift 96 will be complete. And together, you have been an inspiration to me. You have been a living example of what Paul wrote about in Colossians 3, verse 23, when he said, "Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord and not for men, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving." In my human weakness, I can't thank you enough. But know this, God has a way of thanking you, and that's going to be some well-deserved and awesome pat on the back. God bless. And now, back to work.